Hey guys, how's it going? Lagbro here. Welcome to my guide for a Golementalist Volatile Dead character. Ever since they nerfed Poet's Pen Volatile Dead bodyswap, I've always wanted to make a new version of this. With the new Spellslinger and the new Cluster Jewels, I saw a chance at making Volatile Dead great again. The playstyle of Volatile Dead bodyswap is in my opinion very satisfying, and it's now possible to clear all content with this build again. This is not a cheap build, and the gear I used cost around 30 exalts for me to craft or buy, but you can start this off a lot cheaper. This guide will go into the details of the build and also the concept that the build is made around and how you can alter the build to make use of any spell you want. In the background you can see both map clear, bossing and delving, all done at Awakened level 8. And in the end of the video you can see me playing around with some other spells as well without changing my gear. This was just a fun test, but this build and concept can be used with any spell or even attack since we scale generic damage, and you also have the option of going crit or non-crit. You can find the path of building in the video description, and if you like the content it would greatly help me out if you would like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's start talking about the concept and my train of thought making this character. The build revolves around the medium cluster jewels that have heraldry and purposefull harbinger notables. We use 6 of these medium cluster jewels and 3 large cluster jewels. Heraldry increases the effect of all our heralds by 20%, but more importantly reduces the mana our heralds reserve by 10% each. Using 6 heraldry together with Mastermind of Discord ascendancy from Elementalist, our heralds reserve 2 to 3% mana each. With that low reservation, we have room to fit Spellslinger and also some auras. This is where the purposefull harbinger notable comes in and swings for the fences. Purposefull harbinger gives you 10% increased aura effect for each herald affecting us. And since we have 5 heralds, that means we have 50% increased aura effect per medium cluster. With 6 medium cluster jewels, this gives us a total of 300% increased aura effect. Note that the buffs you get from golems also counts as auras, so they will also get increased by 300%. For our large jewels, we go for minion damage with Primordial Bond, instead of going voices that a lot of the Templars are using. Primordial Bond gives you 10% increased damage per summoned golem, some golem life, and also 40% increased effect of buffs from golems. Since we are using 9 golems in this build, we get 90% increased damage for each of our large cluster jewels, adding up to 270% increased damage. The golems will also give us 1000 ES regen per second, a lot of physical damage reduction, attack and cast speed, critical strike chance, accuracy, increased damage, and immunity to ailments with our ascendancy. So now you know the premise of what the build is made around. Our weapon is going to be Poet's Pen, and if you can get one with damage penetrates elemental resistance corruption, that is the best option for map clearing and map bossing. They're also pretty cheap. A normal Poet's Pen go for 5 Chaos Orbs, and a corrupted one with penetration is 1.5 to 2 exalts. It is possible to do all content with just Poet's Pens, but I would recommend getting a rare wand with Warlord influence with the mods of fire damage to spells and damage penetrates elemental resistance, and also flammability on hit and maybe the chance to inflict fire exposure on hit. If you're super rich, also try to go for a +1 fire skill gems wand. When you're buying your wand, try to go for a base with high attack speed, and note that cast speed does nothing for this build. For our body armor, we go for Charon's wrappings. This makes it so that chaos damage does not bypass energy shield, meaning that all the damage we take goes straight to energy shield first, and we can reserve our life for some extra auras in the build. When you're buying your Charon's, try to go for as high ES as you can afford, because we're going to be pretty starved on energy shield on this build. In our shield slot we want Prism Guardian. This makes socketed gems reserve life instead of mana, and it also gives them a couple of extra levels. If you can afford one with the corruption implicit of +2 to socketed AoE gems, that's the one to go for. Our last piece of unique gear is going to be the Primordial Chain Amulet. This gives you an additional 3 golem, and it's also a primordial item, which in turn will give us 1 additional one. Anoint the amulet with charisma using 2 golden oils and 1 opalescent oil. If you're wealthy or crazy lucky, you can get one with the anoint and also a corruption of +1 to maximum elemental resistance, but that's a dream scenario. Okay, so over to the rare pieces we're gonna use. The helmet, we want a hubris circlet with the enchant of Volatile Dead consumes up to 1 additional corpse. This will take us from spawning 3 Volatile Deads per cast to spawning 4, and with the Awakened spellcast we can now spawn up to 20 Volatile Deads per cast. This is debatable if it's good or bad. There's a limit on balls now to 60, so spawning too many too fast will make them disappear before they explode. What you could do instead is go for 150% increased effect of buffs granted by your Flame Golem or your Stone Golem. However, we rarely spawn 20 balls in one go, so I went for the additional ball enchant. Other than that, you want high ES, resistance, and maybe some dexterity and strength so we can use all our gems. For our gloves, we went for a pair of sorcerer gloves crafted with Essence of Insanity. This gives socketed attacks 16% more attack speed, which greatly helps with the spawning of balls. On the gloves you also want as much ES as you can find, resistance, and maybe some normal attack speed as well if you have room for it. Boots, rings, and belts are just generic slots for as much ES as you can find, resistance to cap them at 75, and enough strength and dex to equip the rest of our gear and gems. If you can fit it in, you can also get flammability on hit on one of your rings, or getting cooldown reduction on your belt or on your boots. However, getting too much cooldown reduction can have the same effect as the Volatile Dead helm enchant and make you spawn too many balls too fast, so I opted out of getting that on my boots. On the other hand, cooldown reduction will make you teleport around faster, so clear is going to be a little bit smoother with cooldown reduction. The flasks you want to use in this build are Cinder Swallow Urn, preferably to get this with increased movement speed and the chance to avoid being stunned during flask effect. At Serious Promise, go for as high elemental damage as chaos during effect as possible, and then secondary go for the high physical damage as extra chaos during flask effect. You want a Sulfur Flask or a Bottle of Faith. If you have a Sulfur Flask, go for bleeding or curse immunity on it. You also need a Basalt Flask with either bleed or curse immunity. For your 5th flask, there's a couple of options. I went for an Enduring Mana Flask. You can also go for a Quicksilver or maybe a Rummy's Concoction. Let's get into our skill gems. Our main link in our body armor will be Spellslinger, Volatile Dead, Combustion, Control Destruction, Concentrated Effect, and Spell Cascade. The first thing you want to upgrade when you have all your gear pieces is Spell Cascade into Awakened Spell Cascade. Normal Spell Cascade gives you an area in front and behind of the AoE you cast your spell on that also gets affected. So using Spell Cascade effectively triples the amount of balls you can spawn. Awakened Spell Cascade, however, also affects the areas on the left and on the right of the area you cast on, giving you 5 areas that spawns balls. Think of it like the 5 on a dice, where you cast on the middle dot and Awakened Spell Cascade affects all the other dots for you. Note that for this to work perfectly, you also need Awakened Spell Cascade in your wand. So let's go into that wand setup. We want to use Desecrate, Bodyswap, and Spell Cascade or Awakened Spell Cascade. This setup will trigger with Poet's Pen, but if you're using another wand, you need Desecrate, Spellslinger, and Spell Cascade or Awakened Spell Cascade in it, so you can't fit in Bodyswap there. So using a rare wand will be a run and gun setup instead of the teleport, explode, ball summoning stuff, which can be preferable for say bosses like Cyrus or Guardians. In our shield we want to socket Discipline, Zealotry, and Anger. These auras will give us a lot of energy shield, a lot of more spell damage, and Anger will give us a lot of flat added fire damage to spells. In our Essence of Insanity crafted gloves we want to socket our attack. We use Frenzy linked with Barrage, and we also throw in 2 of our golems here. And the last thing we need to have linked together is Flame Dash and Arcane Surge. I keep my Arcane Surge on level 1 so we trigger it with every cast of Flame Dash. Okay, so with those links done, we now need to fit 5 Heralds and 3 more golems in our build. So for anyone good at math, you're gonna see that we don't have enough jewel sockets for this if we don't go for 2 unset rings. So the heralds we use are Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Purity, Herald of Ash, and Herald of Agony. And the golems we use are Ice Golem, Fire Golem, Stone Golem, Lightning Golem, and Chaos Golem. If you can't find 2 good unset rings, you can drop Ice Golem. That will only give you a little bit more crit chance for our Elemental Overload. And if you can't find any good unset rings, you can drop Arcane Surge from your Flame Dash. And these last golems and heralds doesn't matter where you put them in your gear, just do it where you have the colors for it. The cluster jewels you need are 3 large cluster jewels with % increased minion damage and 8 passives. All of them need to have Primordial Bond and 2 jewel sockets. Other modifiers doesn't really matter, but Renewal Notable can be a really good one with 1% life regen on your golems to keep them from dying. We need 6 medium cluster jewels with minions deal 10% increased damage while you're affected by a herald, or 10% increased damage while affected by a herald. It doesn't matter which one you go for. They need to be 4 or 5 socket. You need to have heraldry, purposefull harbinger, and 1 jewel socket on them. We need 5 or 6 small cluster jewels with % increased energy shield. They need to be 2 socket, and we want them to have energy from Naught mod and also flat ES if you can afford it. You need 1 anima stone. That gives you 2 additional golems if you have 3 primordial items. Remember I said the amulet was primordial? That's one of them. Also you need 1 primordial eminence. Corrupted with corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. This is the second primordial item. And we also need 1 primordial harmony. Mainly for the primordial line, but it also grants you your golem 2% life regen. So now we have 3 primordial items and we can now have 8 golems. Also we pick up a Watcher's Eye with consecrated ground you create while affected by zealotry, causes enemies to take 10% increased damage. And if you're wealthy you can also get damage penetrates 10 to 15% fire resistance while affected by anger. So over to skill tree. Our large cluster jewels are placed at locations of Chaos Inoculation, Minion Instability, and Resolute Technique. Other than that, pick up Pain Attunement for 30% more spell damage when on low life. Zealous Oath, which turns our life regen from a stone golem into ES regen instead. Spiritual Aid, so that the minion damage affects us as well as the golems. Golem Commander for some increased damage, increased effect of buffs from golems, and also an additional golem, so that's our 9th golem. And then we pick up Elemental Overload. You can go crit instead of Elemental Overload on this, but it's gonna require investment into Bottled Faith and moving around some skill points and going into more crit, and also swapping out the Poet's Pen for a wand with crit as well. Our Ascendancy is going to be Pendulum of Destruction, Mastermind of Discord, Leech of the Primordial, and Elemancer. The order you pick these up is very personal. I went for Leech of the Primordial and Elemancer first to get damage, survivability, and the buffs for my golems first, and then I went for the other ones. Just because it takes a few skill points to be able to use all the jewels. I would recommend going life build until you can equip Chevron's wrappings, and then start going for more ES, but keep yourself from going low life until you have at least 4k ES. Leveling into this build, I would recommend go for Stormbrand with a new Archmage support, or you could go for dual wielding Poet's Pen straight away from level 12. In that case, I would go for Ball Lightning in one of the pens and Arc in one of the pens. Or you could go for the Holopollen technique with the Astromantis, that seems to work for everything. Okay, before I leave you, I'm gonna bring up a couple of downsides with this build. In the current state of Path of Exile, doing this many summon skills and teleports, we suffer from sound pollution, meaning sometimes drops doesn't make a sound. This results in us having to backtrack sometimes because we didn't hear the drop. The build also occasionally kills stuff off screen, to the sides, or behind us, which leads to backtracking. So running this build, I would consider running Uber Strict Filter Plus, because you probably don't even want to pick up a fusing, going back for a fusing or an alchemy orb, just get the big drops and speed clear everything. Another downside of this build is in the current league mechanic of delirium, it has a lot of after death explosions and other shit that will kill you, because either you teleport on top of it, or you can't see it because you have so many volatile deads. Despite this, I had a lot of fun on this build and really wanted to share it with you, and I want to thank everyone for watching this far, and I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, I wish you the best and hope you are in the grace of RNGesus.